Get up, Mom. The main seat is for Harper's mother. My son Liam stated, his hand actually resting on the back of my chair, nudging me away from the spot I had reserved. Right at that second, the caterer handed me the thick leather folder containing the $2,800 invoice, and the entire dining room went silent. It was my 65th birthday dinner. I had booked the private room at this restaurant 3 months ago. Yet my daughter-in-law, Harper, had seamlessly rearranged the place cards while I was in the restroom, turning my celebration into an honorary event for her own mother. Harper flashed a tight, triumphant smile as her mother settled into the plush armchair at the head of the long table. The other guests stared uncomfortably at their water glasses. Liam looked down, nervously adjusting his cuffs rather than meeting my gaze. I held the caterer's folder. I felt a quick rush of heat to my cheeks, but I took a steady breath. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene in front of the extended family. I just opened the folder, handed the manager my credit card, and offered him a polite nod. Then I quietly walked to a small, wobbly chair at the far end of the room. From that corner, I watched them. Harper's mother soaked up the attention while Liam and Harper ordered expensive bottles of wine on my tab. In that span of an hour, watching them laugh and toast, a profound shift happened in my mind. For 3 years, I had subsidized their lifestyle. They lived rent-free in the separate annex attached to my house. I paid for their groceries, their utilities, and almost everything in between. But watching my son displace me at my own birthday for his wife's ego was the final straw. The party ended. I got my coat. As the valet brought my car around, my new plan was already set in motion. The drive home was remarkably peaceful. I didn't turn on the radio. I just let the silence settle over me. For so long, I had convinced myself that keeping the peace meant keeping my wallet open. But tonight proved that my generosity had only purchased their disrespect. I pulled into my driveway, glancing at the lights glowing in the annex where Liam and Harper lived. They had beaten me home. I walked inside, hung up my keys, and immediately picked up my phone. I dialed the catering company. The manager who had handed me the invoice answered. "Hi, it's Donna." I spoke my tone even. "I need to make a change to tomorrow's schedule. Please cancel the Sunday brunch delivery." The brunch was Harper's idea, a lavish spread meant to impress her visiting relatives before they flew back out of state. She had simply assumed I would foot the $800 bill for it. The manager confirmed the cancellation and refunded my card. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat at my kitchen island. The anger I expected to feel was entirely absent. Instead, I felt an incredibly sharp clarity. The next morning, I woke up early, put on a pot of coffee, and waited. At exactly 9 o'clock, Harper pushed through the connecting door from the annex into my main kitchen. She didn't knock. She was already tapping frantically on her phone. "The caterer just texted me," she demanded, completely skipping a good morning. "They said there was a cancellation. Did your card decline?" I poured my coffee, set the pot down, and turned to face her. "No, my card is fine. I canceled the order." Harper stopped typing, her jaw dropping slightly. "Why would you do that? My family is expecting food in an hour." I took a slow sip from my mug. "Because my budget for hosting your family expired last night at my birthday dinner." She stared at me, completely caught off guard. Harper let out a loud, incredulous scoff. She was gearing up for a full-blown tirade when Liam shuffled through the connecting door, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" he mumbled. Before Harper could launch into her complaints about the ruined brunch, I placed a small, heavy object on the granite counter. It was the master key to the main house. "Starting today, things are changing." I stated, my voice calm, but leaving no room for debate. "I am reclaiming my privacy. The connecting door stays locked from my side." Harper went pale. She had grown accustomed to treating my pantry like her personal grocery store, walking in at all hours, to grab snacks, wine, or ingredients for their dinners. "You're locking us out of the main house," Liam questioned, his voice cracking slightly. "We're your family. You have your own space in the annex, complete with a kitchen and a separate entrance," I countered, pointing toward the door. "You don't need access to my living area." They tried to argue. Harper threw her hands up, talking about how inconvenient it would be and how we were supposed to share resources. I simply picked up my empty mug and placed it in the dishwasher. I didn't raise my voice or offer any lengthy justifications. I just closed the dishwasher and leaned against the counter. "I'll be installing a new deadbolt this afternoon," I added. Seeing that I wasn't going to engage in a shouting match, Harper grabbed Liam by the arm and stormed back into the annex. The heavy wooden door slammed shut behind them. I immediately called a local locksmith. By 2 in the afternoon, the locks were changed. As the technician handed me the fresh set of keys, I felt a physical weight lift off my shoulders. Reclaiming my physical space was just the first phase. The real structural changes to their free ride were next on my list. Monday morning arrived and I sat down at my laptop with a fresh notebook and a pen. It was time to untangle my finances from theirs. For years, I had quietly absorbed their utility bills, internet, and streaming subscriptions, telling myself it was helping them save for a down payment on a house. But I knew exactly what their bank statements looked like. They weren't saving. They were spending my money on vacations and luxury cars. I logged into my banking portal. With a few simple clicks, I canceled the automatic monthly transfer I had set up to cover their cell phone plans. Next, I called the electric and water companies. I instructed them to separate the meters for the annex, a setup the original builders had installed, but I had never utilized. I printed the confirmation pages and placed them in a plain white envelope. When Liam got off work that evening, I intercepted him in the driveway before he could retreat into his unit. I handed him the envelope. "What's this?" he asked, looking at it suspiciously. "Those are the utility transfer notices," I answered, keeping my tone light but firm. "Starting the 1st of the month, the electric, water, and internet for the annex will be entirely in your name. You'll need to set up your own accounts by Friday to avoid an interruption in service." Liam stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "Mom, we can't afford an extra $400 a month right now. Harper just bought a new wardrobe for her promotion." "Then you will need to adjust your budget," I replied smoothly. I turned and walked back toward my newly secured front door. I didn't wait to hear his excuses. Later that night, the muffled sounds of a very intense argument drifted across the yard from the annex. Liam was finally waking up to reality, but I wasn't done showing them the cost of their entitlement. The next few days were defined by a hostile, icy silence. Harper decided her best strategy was to punish me. Usually, she dropped my 4-year-old grandson Leo at my house for 3 afternoons a week so she could run errands or go to the gym. Suddenly, I wasn't allowed to see him. She clearly expected me to crack, to knock on their door and beg for time with my grandson, offering my credit card in exchange for peace. I missed Leo terribly, but I knew playing her game would only validate her manipulation. Instead of pacing the floors, I used my newly cleared afternoons productively. The annex was furnished almost entirely with my belongings, including a very expensive antique solid oak dining set that Harper had insisted on using when they moved in. Since I owned it, and they were essentially just borrowing it, I listed it online. A collector bought it within hours. When the buyer arrived with a moving van on a Wednesday afternoon, Harper was just pulling into the driveway. She got out of her car, her eyes wide as 2 men carefully loaded the heavy oak table and chairs into the truck. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, running over. "That's my dining table." "Actually, it's my dining table." I corrected her, pulling the original bill of sale from my pocket and waving it slightly. "I decided to sell it since I'm decluttering. You can purchase a new one that suits your own taste." Harper stood completely paralyzed on the asphalt. She didn't have the cash to replace it, and she knew it. Liam pulled up moments later, taking in the empty space where the table used to sit through the annex's bay window. He looked exhausted. He was beginning to realize that the silent treatment wasn't breaking me. It was only giving me the peace and quiet I needed to systematically dismantle the comfortable little empire they had built on my back. 2 days after the table was sold, I texted Liam and asked him to come to my patio alone. He arrived looking nervous, shoulders slumped. I didn't offer him a drink. I simply handed him a 2-page document I had typed up that morning. It's a standard month-to-month residential lease, I explained as he stared at the paper. You've lived in the annex rent-free for 3 years. Starting next month, the rent will be $1,200. That's well below market rate for this area, but it's a necessary adjustment. Liam swallowed hard, his eyes scanning the numbers. Mom, please. We thought this was just our home. We thought we were all supporting each other. Mutual support ended the night you watched your wife push me out of my own birthday dinner so her mother could take the head of the table, I answered. The words hung in the air. Liam didn't have a defense. He knew exactly what he had allowed to happen. You have until Friday to sign it, I added. If it's not signed, I'll assume you're making other living arrangements. He took the paper and walked back to the annex, his head hanging low. I knew perfectly well that Harper would refuse to sign it. She felt unconditionally entitled to my property. Sure enough, Friday came and went. The lease was never returned. I didn't send a reminder text. I didn't knock on their door to ask about it. Their silence was their answer, and it gave me the exact clarity I needed to proceed. That weekend, I spent a few hours researching local real estate agents. I found a highly rated woman who specialized in large, single-family lots. I sent her an email and booked a consultation for the following Tuesday. I had spent decades maintaining this large property first for my late husband, and then for my son. It was finally time to make a decision that served absolutely no one else but me. Since the lease went unsigned, I considered our informal housing arrangement over. However, there was still one more piece of my property inside their unit that I needed back. When they first moved into the annex, I had purchased a high-end stackable washer and dryer set for their bathroom closet. The receipt was in my filing cabinet, completely paid off by me. I put the set on a local neighborhood app and had a buyer by Sunday night. On Monday morning, after Liam left for work and Harper drove off to her office, I used my master key to enter the annex. I let the buyer and his friend inside, and within 20 minutes, the appliances were disconnected and loaded onto their pickup truck. When Harper returned home that evening and went to do a load of laundry, I heard the sharp, furious slam of her back door. She came marching across the lawn and banged on my window. I opened it calmly. "Where are the washer and dryer?" she demanded, her face flushed with anger. "I sold them," I replied simply. "They belong to me, and since you haven't signed a lease, I'm removing my personal assets from the unit." "You can't just take appliances out of our house while we're not home," she yelled. "It's my house, Harper." I corrected her, keeping my voice steady and completely devoid of emotion. "And those were my machines. You are welcome to go to a laundromat or buy your own." I closed the window and locked it. She stood in the yard for a full minute, utterly defeated. Without a washing machine and lacking a dining table, the reality of their situation was becoming impossible to ignore. They had pushed me aside, expecting me to just fade into the background, but instead I was steadily pulling the rug out from under them, thread by thread. The annex was no longer a free luxury suite. The next afternoon, a sleek black car pulled into my driveway. A woman in a sharp business suit stepped out holding a clipboard and a measuring laser. It was the real estate agent, Sarah. We spent an hour walking through the main house, evaluating the hardwood floors, the upgraded kitchen, and the spacious backyard. "This is a prime lot," Sarah noted, taking a few photos of the exterior. With the annex included, you could list this well above neighborhood averages. Families love properties with an in-law suite. We stepped out onto the front lawn to measure the property lines. At that exact moment, Harper drove up. She parked her car and immediately narrowed her eyes at Sarah. She walked over her heels, clicking aggressively on the pavement. "Can I help you?" Harper questioned, her tone dripping with false authority. "What are you measuring?" Sarah offered a professional smile. "I'm conducting a home valuation for Donna. We're preparing to list the property on the market." Harper froze. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. She looked at me, her eyes wide with unadulterated panic. Her entire long-term plan of inheriting this house of living rent-free indefinitely while pushing me into a corner vanished into thin air in a matter of seconds. "You're selling the house," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I am," I confirmed, standing tall. "It's too big for me now. I'm looking to downsize." Harper didn't say another word. She practically sprinted into the annex and slammed the door. 20 minutes later, Liam's car came speeding up the driveway. He must have left work early. I watched from my kitchen window as he ran up to my front door and knocked frantically. The reality they had refused to accept was finally standing right on their doorstep, and this time, they had absolutely no control over the outcome. I opened the front door to find Liam looking completely desperate. Harper stood slightly behind him, wringing her hands. "Mom, you can't sell the house." Liam pleaded, his voice shaking. "Where are we supposed to go?" I leaned against the door frame. "You didn't sign the lease, Liam. That communicated to me that you had no interest in securing your living arrangements here. I'm simply moving forward." Harper pushed past him, her face arranged into a mask of deep, forced remorse. "Donna, I am so incredibly sorry." She purred, her tone dripping with a fake sweetness that made my skin crawl. "I was just so stressed at your birthday dinner. I wanted everything to be perfect for my mom, and I made a terrible mistake. Please, we are family." I looked right past her. "Words don't carry any weight with me anymore, Harper. Actions are the only things that matter." I reached over to the console table in my entryway, picked up a formal printed document, and handed it to my son. It was a standard 60-day notice to vacate. "Here is your written notice. Since you are informal month-to-month tenants, this gives you 2 months to find a new apartment before the house closes." Liam looked down at the paper as if it were a death sentence. Harper dropped the sweet act instantly. "This is completely unfair," she shouted, her true nature flaring back up. "You're throwing your own son out on the street. I'm giving you 60 days to act like adults." I countered with a freezing tone that immediately shut her down. "Adults who don't displace a host at her own birthday party." I closed the door, locking it firmly. They had zero leverage left. They couldn't manipulate me, and they couldn't sabotage the sale. The power dynamic was permanently broken, and I was holding all the cards. Moving day couldn't come fast enough. The house sold in less than 2 weeks for over the asking price. The buyers were a lovely young family who actually appreciated the space. During those final 60 days, Liam and Harper scrambled. Forced to face the brutal reality of the local rental market without my financial cushion, they ended up signing a lease for a cramped, overpriced 2-bedroom apartment on the loud side of town. The day they moved out, they loaded their rented box truck in complete silence. Liam walked over to hand me the keys to the annex. He looked older, humbled. "Goodbye, Mom," he murmured quietly. I took the keys. "Goodbye, Liam. I hope this helps you figure things out." A week later, I moved into my new home. It was a beautiful, low-maintenance townhouse with a small garden and a community pool. The proceeds from the sale safely padded my retirement accounts. Today, I am sitting on my new patio, sipping a cup of coffee and enjoying the morning breeze. The air feels lighter here. I don't carry an ounce of regret for my choices. My son calls me occasionally now. We keep it brief, but his tone is noticeably more respectful. Harper completely avoids me, which is the greatest gift she could have ever given me. I finally see Leo again, only on my terms, when Liam brings him to a nearby park. Setting that boundary was the hardest but most necessary thing I ever did. The moment I was nudged out of my seat at that restaurant turned out to be the wake-up call I desperately needed. I took my life back. I am no longer an extra in my own story. The rules of my life are written entirely by me now, and I intend to savor every single peaceful day of this freedom. If there's one thing I've learned from this entire chapter of my life, it's this: generosity should never become an excuse for someone to walk all over you, even if they are family. For a long time, I convinced myself that keeping the peace meant staying quiet and keeping my wallet open. But I realized that constantly being an endless safety net wasn't helping my son grow. It was just draining me. Setting hard boundaries and walking away from a disrespectful dynamic isn't selfish. Sometimes pulling back is the only way to teach adults how to be adults. You can still care for your family, but you don't have to sacrifice your own dignity, peace, or retirement to do it. True peace comes when you finally decide to stop being a guest in your own life. Or have you ever had to draw a tough line with someone you love to protect your own well-being and peace of mind? I'd really love to hear your thoughts and personal experiences down in the comments below. If you connected with my journey today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps this community grow, and I'll be bringing you more real-life stories about finding your strength, setting boundaries, and reclaiming your life. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.